Alright you guys, and welcome back to a brand new sculpting video. And this week I ran out of clay. Well, not all the clay. Since I still got some pre-ordered cast clay lying around, coming in very clutch in such clayless situations. Now, one question still remains though, since you all might be asking, hey, what is he gonna sculpt with that cast clay? Well, actually you probably won't be asking that question because you all saw the thumbnail. Well, you lucky bastards. But hey, I'ma tell you regardless, since after all I'm the one holding this lonely monologue with the microphone. So, who's gonna stop me? The microphone? I don't think so. So, I might just relieve you from all your burning questions. I'm gonna be sculpting a platypus. Not just any platypus though, since I'll be making Perry, aka Agent P. Yo, that's a badass name by the way, but he's gonna be realistic. And right now you can see me holding this very familiar bean-shaped wiener in my hands, ideally not green, onto which I'm currently adding those tiny whiny legs, holding a relatively massive body. And in that case I'd assume that basic walking is more like doing heavy squats, which is why I'm giving him legs like Tom Plotz. Well, not as big though. And since I'm making a mammal that is essentially just a buffed version of a duck, I'll make sure said duck got a beak that is wide and round and overall just superior. Once I got an acceptable beak, I'll stick it directly between his empty eye sockets, since that's where beaks usually go. And after poking in 2 nostrils, I can move on to filling said empty eye sockets by rolling 2 white balls in my hands, working as future eyes. And since I'd assume a realistic Agent P gotta have some hanging eyelids covering half his eyes, I'ma add those as well. And I'll admit, he's still looking kinda lifeless with those empty eyes, but do not worry, I promise I'll fill them with some wonky signs of life at the end of this video. Anyways, after adding some more wrinkles and folds around the eyes, since every natural face has a couple of these, and that is fine. No need to stuff more money down a plastic surgeon's throat. You're beautiful as you are. Anyways, at this point I've made some decent progress on the hat, which I'll, after test fitting on his big ass head, set aside and get started working on his arms. Said armsies started as they all do with an aluminium wire being covered in some clay. Onto which I'll then add a hand with 4 fingers each, and I'm very happy to do so, since in my universally correct opinion, 4 fingers is the perfect number of fingers, since that 5th one does absolutely nothing besides exponentially increasing the amount of ball itching I get while sculpting. Seriously, when was the last time you thought, thank God I got 5 fingers, I'd be doomed if I just got 4? Alright, calm down. Back to the sculpture, where I'm now adding the decently muscular arms to the body. One of which is of course scratching the spot where it itches sometimes, since any other depiction just couldn't be considered realistic. And with my Perry now getting closer to being finished, I can start to plan the placement on this half testicular ball shaped base, as well as add 2 tiny sausages working as his feet. Now, the stud among you might have noticed that there is still a tail missing, which is exactly why I'm now mixing some orange clay in order to make said flat tail. And after carving on that sweet Perry tail texture on both sides, I can stick it directly into his butt, where it will not only add aesthetic, but also some stability. And after blending in the tail, I can go back to the front where I'll be adding some realistic toenails to his feet, or maybe he just got one big toe. I don't know. Anyways, after doing some medically approved surgery on his brain, and stick his hat in place, I can then turn my platypus into a platter baked. And for such a funny joke, I definitely deserve a present, which is why I'll be opening a brand new brush, making me feel that jolly Christmas spirit in April. And due to that, I'm now extremely close to chopping down a tree and decorating it while singing jingle bells. But I better suppress that urge, since otherwise my neighbors, already suspicious of me, might actually call the cops on me this time. So instead, I'll rather continue painting, or washing in this case, since I'm currently applying a dark green wash into all the cracks and folds. And after changing the color of wash I'm using from green to orange, I highlighted all the details on his beak as well as tail. And with the unpleasant sunlight coming through my window, I can switch the wash one final time in order to add some depth to that hat. And that's the washing done, which means we're now onto the dry brushing, or in this case, the dry sponging, since I'm using a sponge and not a brush. Well, that explanation probably was unnecessary. Anyways, after applying the dry brush on tail and body, I'll move on to, as promised, add some of that life to the eyes. But you won't see me adding the pupils, since that task is always extremely nerve-wracking to me, and having a huge camera in my face while doing it simply wouldn't help. So adding some UV resin to the eyes is gonna be the final touch. And with that, my realistic Agent P is done. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Let me know down below which character you wanna see me make a realistic version of next. And make sure to check out the realistic Pink Panther. Oh, that's too big. And make sure to check out the realistic Pink Panther I made if you haven't seen it already, which I know you didn't, since that video is currently sitting at a whopping 71 views. And as always, please consider liking the video if you can't wait for Christmas either. And please subscribe, baby, and I'll catch you in the next one. And I love y'all. Bye.